Hello and welcome to the Autism Recovery Summit 2, Hope and Possibilities. I'm your host, Luminara Serdar. I'm very thrilled to have JoQueta Handy with us today. What an amazing woman in the world of autism. What I'll say about her is she has so many qualifications. She's a naturopathic doctor. She has a PhD in integrative medicine and a doctorate in quantum medicine. And she's a pediatric speech language pathologist with 21 years experience. And I welcome you to say a little bit more about your background or how you got into the autism field. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here today and be a part of autism recovery. How did I get started with autism? That was back in the early, don't feel this old, but anyway, that was back in the early 90s. And I was actually living in New York, working in the New York hospitals, and I was asked to be part of a government grant. It was actually one of, I think it was the very first low-VOS school. And it was connected with Columbia University. And so a team was put together to prove kind of the efficacy of ABA in the very beginning. I had never heard about ABA. We were required to take classes and learn about it, and then go in and implement the strategies as a whole rehab team.
Can you just real quickly say what ABA means, what it is?
Certainly. Applied behavior analysis. And so I had never heard of autism until that time, or if they mentioned it in grad school, I wasn't listening that day or something. And so this was just, an immersion, learning by immersion, definitely. And we were sent into homes in Brooklyn, New York, in Borough Park. And I was immediately met with these children that I didn't know what to do. And at that time, Kirkman Labs was mail ordering families these massive bottles of B vitamins. And it didn't really make a lot of sense to me why that was being done. And so I'd always had a passion for nutrition and the way that the body is able to heal itself through food. And so I went back, got my a certification in natural medicine, and began implementing it within my practice of language, speech and language treatment, and primarily working with the autistic population, the ASD population. And it served me so well. And I truly believe in the deepest, with my whole heart, that autistic children are here to teach us. They have taught us so much about nutrition, our environment, our food, our educational system, and I have learned so much from them and from this journey that I've been on.
Wow. And so you really got into the nutritional aspect. And can you tell us something about you started with Kirkman Labs because they had all these vitamins. You went back to school. What are some of the things you found? And I think some of our listeners will know this, and people who are new to this won't. So this could be very, very helpful from your perspective of like how you picked it up and how you learned it.
Absolutely. Again, it was just through total immersion. It was actually the parents that were, such amazing teachers, because they have to be, having these children who are reacting extremely to gluten, to casein, to food colorings, to things within the environment. And, they quickly learned what worked and what didn't work. And working with a practitioner one time, and he started, and telling parents, you need to do this, you need to do that. He didn't have a lot of experience in the ASD population. And I immediately just stopped him. I'm like, these parents know way more than you know, because they have to. So again, I think parents are our greatest resource in learning about the children. I honestly feel we have learned the most in the past 3 years. For instance, maybe 4 years, 3 to 4 years. For instance, we know without a doubt that ASD is 100% gut. And so honoring that gut-brain connection and starting with the gut is the number one place for healing, for advancement in language, behavior, cognition, academics. We have to start there because that's where it begins.
Can you say something about, I mean, there has been a lot of research, and there was that, paper by Andrew Wakefield way back in the Lancet that was discredited because, he was a gut doctor, not an autism doctor. So, can you share just a little bit for people who aren't familiar with that idea of why it's the gut? Can you do a little bit of why that is?
Absolutely. Well, if we look at the microbiome and all the study that we've learned, the studies that have been done on the microbiota, that third layer of the intestine, doctors have been chiropractors, holistic doctors have known this for a long, long time. And, they've been actively using it in medicine and criticized. And I honestly think, it took an epidemic, unfortunately, to get our attention, to really see the importance of this third layer of the intestine. I mean, now in some of the research, they are saying, this is our immune system. This level of the gut.
Is this third layer you're talking about, is that the biofilm, or is that just all the little microbes floating around?
Literally the third layer of tissue called the microbiota. So when we talk about leaky gut, we're not talking about, that there's holes in the intestine and there's food floating around in your bloodstream, but we are talking about that layer being damaged. And as we've learned more and more about, again, from autistic children, yeast and fungus, we've learned what we were doing wrong. And from studying the microbiota, that third layer, we've learned that there is a biomedical cascade that we absolutely have to honor. So an example of that is, we know in that third layer, in a lot of cases of autism, children can have a high level of yeast and fungus, candida, different types of candida, different types of fungus. And so, 20 years ago, one of the first treatments would be to give nystatin, diflucan, and the yeast is so high, let's cut the yeast levels. Well, what would happen is you would see this there'd be like a little 2-week reprieve, and then all of a sudden it would cycle around, and it would be almost like an exacerbation. And, the devastating feeling for parents of, how do I hold on to hope in watching this cycle? And we were doing this over and over and over. And it wasn't until like the past 3 or 4 years that we realized that the body holds on to fungus as a protective mechanism. It will then produce a layer of mucus. Fungus and mucus together produces the perfect breeding ground for parasite. So the body doesn't make mistakes. Even if we have high blood pressure, we have to ask, why is the body needing to increase pressure? And so the same thing was true with yeast and fungus. Why is the body not letting go of this yeast and fungus? We used to say, well, it's just the nature of the beast. It's just autism. No, there was a purpose in it. And so when we look above that layer, if there's heavy metals, if there's virus, if there's bacteria, the body is going to hold on to that fungus level for protection. So we have to start above that in our treatment.
Well, where do you start then? If you're not using the diflucan, if you're not using, like you said, when you use those antifungals, you get a little reprieve because you kill off the stuff, and then it'll just come back with a vengeance because it's there to protect. So, where do you start in your practice?
Well, after 20 years of evolution, I didn't start where I am right now. Let me say that first of all. It has been an amazing journey and an incredible learning experience. So I used to start with, vitamin supplements, and when I think back of what I put these poor children and parents through, in just the amount that had to go down on a daily basis, and seeing little to no change. It wasn't until about the past 4 years, about that same amount of time, that I switched to herbal-based supplements using a company out of Salt Lake City, Solutions 4. And what attracted me to the company was the owner, the developer, Dr. Linda Nelson, her story of her own healing from being toxic on penicillin at a very young age and on a high amount of medication. And again, her whole journey. So I was like, this is interesting. Let me explore this. And, one of the parts of her story was that when she went back in 1979 to purchase the products that had healed her body, the Chinese herbalist that had worked with her said, yes, I'll sell you these formulations, but you can't package them in the U.S. The level of our cleanliness of a product, we say a product is clean in the U.S. if it has 2 rat hairs in it. And he said this will absolutely destroy the integrity of these products. And so she went to Japan, where they have a very high standard of packaging and distribution. For 17 years, that's where she packaged Solutions 4. She returned to the U.S. In Salt Lake City, and I have been to their distribution center, learned hands-on about their products, and it's amazing. And so all of that impressed me. I said, oh, this is great, wonderful. It wasn't until I tried it with autistic children that I was like, whoa, this is legit. Okay, this is really what it says it is, because so many times with autism, again, because of the gut, we see the child react more to what's in the food than the food itself. Again, they have been amazing teachers to us about how we have destroyed our own food. And so when I started using the supplement, it was the first time in about that time, in about 16 or 17 years, that I could give the same supplement across the board, or the same several supplements across the board to every single child. Mm-hmm. And parents started reporting consistent results of a change in bowel movements in 2 days, which with autism, that's huge. A change in cognition in 2 weeks. And for some children that had the little bloated bellies, we would see them lose as much as 2 clothing sizes without losing a pound between a month and 2 months on this protocol. Wow. And so I started using it across the board in my practice. And so we were able to target, a form of chelation with using certain herbs and certain layering of herbs. We were able to address bacteria, virus, and fungus. But most of all, what I saw in this product being different in the layering of these herbs, that it wasn't about detox. It was truly about healing the tissue. And so while children needed maybe an increased level of the herbs for about 3 to 4 months, after that time, we were able to decrease and maintain integrity just through a maintenance dose.
Wow. So I have lots of questions. Are the herbs available in the U.S.? Are they like our standard things that we grow in our country? Like what kind of herbs?
That's what blew me away. They are so standard. I mean, if you look at the formulation, it's nothing out of the ordinary. And that's when I first looked at it and like, okay, this is nice. I'm not really sure what this is going to do. Again, I think it's not only the herbs, but the integrity of the product that's truly making a difference. So yes, it was a lot of like in the gut healing, we're using burdock root, dandelion, milk thistle, burberry, some very common, herbal-based supplements that we hear about all the time for their healing properties.
But it sounds like there's a certain order in which to use them. I mean, you don't want to kind of blast the system with a bunch of herbs. You want to be very gentle, and we basically co-evolved with these plants. And I think that part of nature is here, right, to be a part of us.
Yes, yes. I think Solutions 4 has done an amazing job with their layering of the herbs per supplement. And there's, with their company, there's about 40 years of science behind just their company. But then on top of that, the Chinese medicine that really goes back to the foundation of where the supplements are coming from is centuries old.
And you said that this helps to heal the gut and that third layer. So I'm curious. Some of the herbs you mentioned sound like real liver tonics and things that help the liver a lot.
Yes.
What about that? You said you don't do the detox. You're doing these herbs. Is there gentle detox happening? Is there gentle management of the microbes happening? Can you say that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what's so unique about it. Again, in the science and the layering of how these are formulated. I tell my patients all the time, we're going to use an antibiotic level of herbs. What does that mean? Well, that means if you had strep throat and you went to the doctor and he's saying, where you are today, right now, I want there to be in 7 days, I want you to be at this place. And so he's going to put you on a Z-Pack, zithromycin, to force the body, hopefully, into that change. So we can do the same thing very safely with herbal-based supplements. Herbs are food. We know that food is our best medicine. That's the way that we're wired. So so we are giving specific amounts. We're giving specific layering, like for instance, one of the supplements that I use in healing as well as detoxing at that same time one capsule contains about 10 different herbs. So that's where we're talking about that antibiotic level. But I think because it is food-based, we can do that in a very gentle and natural way. So the way that the program is formulated is I always tell parents, let's space this over about a 12-week period. Because if you think of a scenario of, let's say, a broken bone, a broken arm, from the day that cast goes on to the day that it comes off, it's about 9 to 12 weeks for you to regain full mobility of that arm. And that's the same way that we have to think of the gut and healing. First, we have to reduce inflammation. Body won't heal as long as it's inflamed. The next thing is that we have to actually then heal the tissue. And the final phase is to reproduce or regain functional mobility.
Right. That's the regrowing of the gut and the whole gut.
Yes, exactly. And so because we know that we grow serotonin in our gut, that's one of those links that we see then where parents are saying in 2 weeks, we're seeing a change in cognition. I think a big part of that is the inflammatory response coming down also, and the inflammatory response in the brain. But that's the length of time that we focus on. And then after that, looking and seeing, okay, now what do we need to do to maintain that stage? Doesn't mean that the child is healed, but we see a significant difference in that time period, a very manageable difference within that time period.
Right. And it sounds like that is the first step, healing the gut. And then there are steps after that, but it sounds like that's a very effective way, a method for healing the gut, what you've experienced. And I know that you also use CBD oil with your kids, and I'm so curious about your usage of that, what you've done, what you've seen, any advice you have for parents that you're allowed to give. Maybe not advice,
Absolutely.
but tips.
No, I would be happy to. Again, that has been about a 4-year journey and evolution. I worked very closely with Dr. Jeff Bradstreet. He was my mentor. We worked closely together for about 20 years. And it was Dr. Bradstreet who, like most things in my practice, said, JoQueta, you need to look at this, and you need to, we're working on it, work with me and bring this in to your practice with the kids. And so I went through about probably 4 different formulations. And the one that I ended up with ended up being just right in my back door here in Orange County, a company called Earth Alchemy. And I love working with them. They're an amazing company because they're truly treating from the heart. And where it evolved was, I started with what's called a tincture, meaning CBD strain, and then that's cut with about 50% coconut oil so that it ends up being a drop. What I saw for ASD children was 2 things. For a lot of the kids, that was like giving them water. The tinctures, in my experience, did not work well. The second part of that was the strain was extremely important. So one of the most common strains is the AC/DC strain. That particular strain has a little bit higher level of THC. It's predominantly CBD, but when you compare it to other strains, the THC is a little a 0.1, 0.2% difference. And you're like, that's nothing. Well, with ASD children and their sensitivity, that is something. And so what would happen with about 50% of the kids is it would have the opposite effect of what we were going for. It would ramp them up. They wouldn't sleep all night. Extreme hyperactivity. And so in finding the right strain and the right formulation was huge. So I use a formulation that's a 20-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC, so like traces of THC.
I'm sorry, I realized I wanted to backtrack just a little bit and say, can you just define what the CBD is and what the THC for people who have no experience with this?
Thank you. So CBD is cannabis, okay? That is the non-narcotic side of the plant. That is actually what all of the medical white papers were written on. We have over 60 medical white papers written on CBD. And what happened in those papers is they found that no matter what the type of cancer, no matter what the stage, when they gave CBD to patients, they improved over the ones who didn't have it. And when they backed into it and looked at it and they said, what's happening here? Well, it was an anti-inflammatory response that was causing the immune system to improve, to fire. And so that's exactly what's happening with autistic children. We see that CBD is helping to reduce the inflammatory response. Now, THC is the side that's the narcotic side. Okay, that's the psychotropic side of it. And so while with some conditions that can be very helpful, like we know with children with seizures, a little bit of THC can actually improve a seizure condition. But again, in my findings, the children with autism, Down syndrome also, that CBD piece is the most important. So getting that to the highest ratio in comparison to the THC is what seems to help the most. Again, the THC, in my experience, has caused hyperactivity in the brain.
But is the THC necessary? Because I think you can get some CBD that has no THC in it.
Correct. So that is the strain that I'm using. It's genetically grown, and the ratio on all of another reason why I love this company that I work with is every batch is clinically tested, and I get to see the toxicology report. I get to see the ratio because, yes, you can have a seed, and yes, it should always come out the same, but plants don't. And so so seeing that ratio and making sure that it's as pure as possible is very important for me and my patients. In this last growth that we just had this last planting, it actually came out to a 30-to-1 ratio, which was like unheard of. And we can't explain why. It was exact same seeds. Something just happened. So it's even better. And we see that with aggression, how is it helping children? Well, it's helping them with aggression. So some of my ASD patients, with the onset of puberty, changing of hormones, we'll see aggression go up. Sleeping. This formulation is amazing for helping children sleep. And then just in that inflammatory response. So I have a school that we run here, and all of our kids are on supplementation, CBD, and then the other tools that we're using from a learning standpoint. But we're taking that, we're practicing what we preach, that the working on the gut first doesn't have to be in place of. You can do it simultaneously, but making sure that the gut healing pieces are in place is very, very important. What in looking at the strain, then what we were saying, the tincture versus the full plant extract. So it has been my experience that the full plant extract is what works the best with at least the kids I'm working with in the ASD population. Makes it a little hard in the delivery system. So far, we haven't come up with a, accurate delivery system, non-messy delivery system.
Do they take it orally?
Yes, it is taken orally. And because it's thick, it's like a gel, it's sticky. It is so hard in the delivery system of it. So, so far the only way, and I've talked to some other people who are using full plant extract, and they're saying the same thing. The only way that we found to deliver it is through a syringe, of course, without a needle. And so what I have parents do is they just use their thumbnail. And when we talk about we're giving a drop, it's literally like thinking of a period at the end of a sentence. That's a dose. And
wow.
Yes. And so just, on the thumbnail into the child's mouth, or onto the child's thumbnail and into the mouth, because it's really sticky. And if you put it on a spoon, you lose a lot of product. So that's why we're, doing it kind of directly into the mouth. But the dosing, again, in that format, you can imagine it's not super accurate. But it's, you might get a little extra at one time or a little less, something like that. But that's the way that I use CBD. We're dosing about 5 drops a day for the average.
So all throughout the day?
Throughout the day, correct, because we want to keep that, that autonomic nervous system, that fight or flight, in a constant, as much as a constant state of calm. Because again, from a learning standpoint, when we're in that alpha theta brainwave state, that's when we have our highest level of learning.
Okay. And so what, if I can summarize just a little bit, what it sounds like is when you give that teeny tiny dose of the CBD, it helps really calm the fire in the brain. It helps calm the inflammation. And when we all know, when there's not the inflammation, the brain works a whole lot better. So you can see the, calmness and, maybe do you see better cognition and comprehension, these types of things?
Yes. It's not only in the brain, it's also in the gut. So for our parents that are familiar with Autism 1, there's been, in the past 2 years, there's been some wonderful speakers on CBD. Dr. Marco Ruggiero was one of for 2 years in a row. He has talked about the cannabinoid receptors in the brain and in the gut. We've identified that there's 2. And so when we're giving cannabis, that's literally, we are working on that gut-brain connection from an inflammatory response.
Wow. Yeah. And I think from what I know, the cannabis is still pretty new, right? It's still pretty new legally. Yes. in some states and not even in others. So it's still, we're still uncovering some of the benefits, I think.
Correct.
And still investigating it.
And
Yeah.
just to, to also ease parents' mind on the CBD side, this is non-narcotic, non-habit forming. You cannot get addicted to CBD. So in worrying, I'm drugging my child, I'm stoning them, all of those things I've heard, you're not. You absolutely aren't. And the healing properties that it has as a plant, again, in identifying where it's specifically targeting the brain and the gut, it's huge. And that's what we see with a lot of my kids is it's not, I always tell parents, dose by the day. So if it's a bad day, if it's been a bad night, don't be afraid to give a little bit more, because that nervous system is going to regulate that much faster for the next day. And what we see by approaching it that way is then they're not having to use this on an ongoing basis. We're also able to move children, the children where I gave them the tincture, that 50% coconut oil CBD mixture, and it was like water, it did nothing. We can then move them into a tincture. And we see that be beneficial. We can see them not needed at all or not needed on a daily basis. So I think that's where we can really see the research of, is this truly healing? Yes, it is.
I see. So how long would you say, okay, let's say, whether you're doing it concurrently with healing the gut or whether you've done that 9 to 12 weeks healed the gut, then I don't know if there is any average, but how long might someone stay on the very concentrated, sticky CBD oil? And then, when would they move to, taking it less and being more on a maintenance type thing?
It does vary. I would say, looking at my caseload, the oldest child that I have, or the oldest student that we have, is 23 years old right now, all the way down to the youngest being 4. And so I would say, with our older children, it's about 6 months that we're seeing before we can move them into like a tincture. And with our younger children, it's pretty quick. I mean, within a couple of months, we can see parents not have to use it on a daily basis. And, kind of be that thing that's you just keep on your shelf as needed.
That's amazing. That is so healing. I love that. Wow. Thank you. That's so informative for parents. If you haven't, if you've been afraid to look into this, I'm sure people can contact you, right? If they have questions or
Absolutely
would like to get in touch with your supplier or, just want more. Like I know we're touching on it, but what I find is parents really want to be sure before they take those steps.
Absolutely.
So how would people reach you?
Sure. One way is through my website. It's just drjoquetahandy.com. And JoQueta is JoQueta. Handy is HANDY. And all of the information is there. There's a link on that website called Brilliant Learning, and that has all the nutritional information that I've talked about today. Information with direct links to Earth Alchemy are on that website, as well as any information in learning and how to combine that, from an academic language standpoint also.
I want to ask you about that in a moment, but first, one more question about the diet, food, gut, and what do you see in this healing process as you're doing the herbs? What's the diet? And we know a lot of kids are picky and they're not going, they don't want to eat things. So what do you see is a good diet that's been successful in your practice?
Well, I think that's a really neat piece. I'm so glad you asked me that question. That's where I've really seen an evolution. So when we start children on this particular herbal protocol, the only deal breaker is white sugar. And I said that because I see parents struggle. I've watched it over the past 20 years. I mean, I've had, a child that for 10 years, all he ate was scrambled eggs and ketchup. And I'm not exaggerating. That was literally all he ate. And what we consistently see, I've in my naturopathy training, one of the doctors that I studied under, he would say, oh, that person has a toxic personality. And I always thought that was so cruel. I was like, why are you saying that about them? What he was trying to say is, when there's toxins in our gut, it affects our brain. So it directly affects our personality. Again, ASD has shown us that at the highest level. When we begin to heal that, we see changes not only in the brain, but in our food choices. And so, like this one child that I talked about that only ate scrambled eggs and ketchup, he would say all the time, I need water. There's fire in my gut. And he, when we started using this protocol, his mom actually posted on Facebook, he ate salad for the first time, asked for salad, and ate a whole plate. We had another child that it was even an awareness. He was with his mom shopping in the grocery store, and he went over and picked up a piece of meat and said, Mom, what is this? And she said, I think it was steak or maybe hamburger or something. And he said, can we have this tonight? Never ever noticed that. He was probably about 10 or 11 at the time when that happened. Another child who came in every time with Starbucks cake pops, McDonald's vanilla shake, and chicken nuggets. And I'm just like, oh. I'm like, okay, the only thing that, is a deal breaker here is the white sugar. And after 2 weeks, this, because the cake pops were a little special treat from Grandma, and Grandma took him to Starbucks, and he turned and he said, no, grapes, please. So he started self-eliminating. He started changing, and that's what I've consistently seen happen. So children are making choices for a reason. And the white sugar is a deal breaker. That is a major inflamer. And so we do need to take that out of the diet, but that's not good for anybody. So it shouldn't be in their diet to begin with. But that's the only stipulation that I've ever said. A lot of my patients come to me already on gluten-free, casein-free diets. And again, when working on healing the gut, then we see the child spontaneously make the changes, sometimes in spite of the parents.
And you said that children make choices because of what they need. So when you see people making the choice of white sugar, what do you think is the quote unquote need? Is it the need of the child really, or is it the need of something else going on?
Yes. It's unfortunately in America, we are surrounded by sugar. Almost every one of our products, they did a study on the grocery food aisles, and 99% of every one of our grocery food aisles is sugar-based, white sugar-based. So, it's convenience, and I get that. I'm a mom of 5. I totally understand. As parents, we are tired, and sometimes we just need that quick grab and go. But that is white sugar. Cancer cells love white sugar. They thrive on it. And it is a brain fogger. It is an inflamer. As with my children, I would tell them going to a birthday party, I want you to go to that birthday party. I want you to have fun. That's a big social part. But just know the next day, we're going to do something different. And we're going to kind of go to the opposite extreme in healing and cleaning up that gut. So, yes, life happens, but we need that conscious awareness around eliminating that from our children's diet.
And would you say that one of the reasons that the desire for all that sugar is like yeast and bacteria and the microbes is it? What I'm getting at is that the thing that's pulling us to eat that versus our true, what we really need in our bodies?
Absolutely. Our body can only crave what we put in it. So like if a baby is not going to crave a charbroiled steak. So the level of our pancreas is very much set around driving those cravings. So when we take sugar away, that natural craving is going to go away over time.
Excellent. And you do have your educational system. You have Children's Opportunity for Brilliance. and it's your mission to educate in a different way. Can you say a little bit about that and how that integrates? I mean, you've already mentioned that you have your classroom, but how that integrates with the biomedical and behavior, and just anything you want to say about it, really.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, a tool is only as good as we know how to use it. So I see so many times that, children are going through wonderful programs, intense programs, but do we know how to, integrate that tool into the classroom? Not always. So one of the focus that I've taken is to say, let's look at the child's learning strengths. Let's look at those tools, those strategies that serve them best, but let's show them how, and let's show teachers and parents how to integrate that side by side within curriculum so that we see the child's true potential. So kind of the course that we take here is first addressing nutrition with as what we've talked about. At that same time, we're looking at their learning strengths and identifying those and putting them back into curriculum as a learning strategy, and then incorporating that across the board into learning. So in working very closely with school systems from the East Coast to the West Coast, I've seen a consistent theme that we don't recognize the potential in our children. We see the label, and we see the characteristics of that label. And so many times children, they absolutely are not given the opportunity that they're capable of and that their peers are having. And so we're right now at epidemic stages of our special needs population, with ASD leading the pack of not receiving a high school diploma, not graduating from high school. And the CDC says that by 2020, we're going to see a 300% increase in our 18 to 22-year-old population, and 90% of those students will be unemployed or unemployable. And I don't think I believe that is not the child's fault. That's our fault. That's our fault as doctors and teachers and educators. And so we have to come up with a better solution. We have to do it differently. And so that's kind of where my program approach has come from.
Can you give one example, maybe take a student or like one example of someone where how you've identified their learning style and then how you would apply that, just so people have a concrete, hold on that?
Absolutely. The most children with learning challenges, whether it's ASD, Down syndrome, brain trauma, whatever the diagnosis, their learning strength is around visual learning. The brain has compensated. We're even seeing, just because we're a technology-driven world, that we're growing different brains in our children now. And we're seeing a real dominance in children who are visual learners. So what does that mean? Well, that means that their learning strengths are around movement, rhythm, and visualization. A movie. So many times we'll have a parent say, I don't understand why they can't remember that word that they just read, or they can't remember how to spell that word. They can't remember how to write that word, but they can see a movie one time and they can sing the song. They can repeat the lines. They can remember details. Well, because that movie's around their learning strengths. And so can we copy a movie in all areas of curriculum? Yeah, we can. And so when we look at, again, their learning strengths and put that back into curriculum, we see accuracy increase and frustration decrease. So many times that child that's being isolated from their peers in that special classroom, not being given the same curriculum, the same opportunities to learn it, so many times it's our fault. It's the way that we're presenting it to the child to begin with. And if we just step back and said, well, what do they really enjoy? What do they really do well? That's our answer. That's how they learn best. And then we just take that and we copy it. And it's that easy.
Wow. And how do parents get this into their school system?
Well, that's been a bit of a challenge, but right, you never stop and you never give up hope. So I've spent about 15 years in that area. And again, I've gone through many evolutions of it. But right now, what has seemed to work really well is empowering parents. And parents are the army, right? They are the army of change. And so I provide workshops. We have one actually starting in March, our first one, of hands-on workshops teaching parents how to recognize their child's learning strengths, how to put those learning strengths back into curriculum. We talk about the nutrition piece, brain chemistry, all of that is done in the workshops, and we give those throughout the year. And those dates are on the website. And then I also developed a website where using from my actual caseload, both verbal and nonverbal, showing the exercises. And I did it in what's called a grab and go way, because I realized that, as a mom, I don't have time to sit down and spend, a day, sometimes even an hour, learning how a specific exercise. So we set these up. The videos are no longer than 5 minutes. The average is about 2 minutes. And you can literally look up, I need a strategy for math. I need a strategy for reading. And I have a nonverbal child. And you can pull that exercise, watch the little 2-minute video, and go off and implement it. Or in saying to your teacher, could you just watch this video? I've been trying this out at home and this works really well. And, it's right there in front of them. So it's also meant to create a team approach because with any child, it takes a village. And so with us all coming together, doctors, teachers, parents, specialists, when we're all working toward the same goal, cueing in the same way, we see the child advance as much as 70% in as little as 16 hours. And so that's the other goal of the website, is that we can all come together on a united front for the benefit of the child.
Wow. And so that just sounds amazing. And you just mentioned all of us who have to come together, teachers, specialists, doctors, parents, and you're all of them, all in one. So it makes sense that you've created this. Sounds like such an amazing program. And I just want to make sure that that parents can have access to that. You said it's on your website, JoQuetaHandy.com. And is there a particular tab that they would look at for that?
Yes. So it's drjoquetahandy.com. And then the tab that says Brilliant Learning would have all of those videos, as well, again, as the information that we've talked about today from supplementation in talking about the solutions for. I tried to set that up and answer parents' questions on that. So literally every single supplement is outlined what's in it. I even went to Dr. Nelson, and he is on there on the video describing the supplement, how it was put together, why it was put together the way it was. And so he's on there personally talking about it. And there's several parent testimonials on there, as well as in just what they personally saw in their child. Okay, so we go to the Brilliant Learning tab. You have all the information, and that's where they can find those videos, those little grab and go videos where you can go and implement a new strategy for math or reading or whatever it is. And that's where they can find information on your workshops for, kind of the bigger stuff, right? Yes.
The more comprehensive program.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you do this all through, you said you do them all throughout the year. Do you do them in Southern California, or do you do them all over?
They are in Southern California, but we have, for our parents that are not able to travel, at every workshop, we provide the ability to Skype in. And for our international families, where I wasn't smart enough to clue in and be like, oh, there's a time change difference. Parents don't want to get up at 3 in the morning to Skype to do a workshop. So for our international families, we also have webinars. So it is done in a webinar version that the parent can go back and watch at a more appropriate time frame.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all those resources. And you have one more thing for our parents. This is a free gift. So would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely. So the website came from a book that I wrote called Brilliant Learning. And Brilliant Learning outlines everything that's on the website. The website just provides the visual piece. And since the book was written about 3 years ago, the website, we've added more exercises, and we're constantly adding more exercises. So the website's what keeps you current, but the book provides the foundation. And so you can, just in reading the book, you'll get great pieces of information on how to see the learning strengths in your child. And no matter what age your child is at, from 3 to 23, how to implement strategies depending on where they are at the time. So anyone who is listening today that goes in and goes on the website, click on the Brilliant Learning tab, and just let me know that you were part of this webinar, and I will be happy to send that book to you for free. There's a place right there on the website. It'll say, contact us, and that's all that you need to do. There's a place where you can sign up for a quick start guide if that's what you would like also to get started on the website, and I will send that book to you as my gift for being part of this wonderful journey with all of us.
Wow, that's very generous. So what you're saying is they're actually going to get a physical book, not just a download of an ebook, but do you also have an ebook? Because I know some people actually prefer to read that way.
So if you would rather, on Amazon, there is the ebook and the Kindle version. If you just go onto Amazon with Brilliant Learning, we do not have that ability on the website, and I apologize for that. But yes, if you'd rather have the Kindle version or ebook version, it's available also.
Okay, so just to clarify, they go to your website under Brilliant Learning and they sign up to get the book and say they saw the Autism Recovery Summit too, and then they'll get the book for free.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, so generous. You've been so generous with your time and your experience, and I love that, over the couple decades, things have evolved and you've evolved and you can bring this really clear solution to people in so many ways. So brilliant.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to be a part of this.
Oh, it's been wonderful. And I want to thank our listeners, and I hope you got so much out of that. I certainly did. Thank you. Bye-bye.